fellow sinners and saints. Tonight we're going to be talking about Pedro Alonso Lopez. It's a doozy. So let's jump right into it. Let's give it a go. Maybe. Nothing ever works right. I don't get it. Oh, there we go. First, there is this that I want to play. Go sub up to the Black Widow channel. Her channel will be in the description area. Let me close some of these out. Because apparently my computer has short-term memory.
Is YouTube the new mental asylum? The Black Widow has something to say. Sometimes I wonder, when people trust, which normally is a human instinct, give out private information, tell tragedies sometimes to help others, open themselves up. You weaponize the worst this world has to offer. Some creators prey on one's weakness and vulnerability for content. I have one real friend on YouTube and have met her. She is a wonderful person. It's sad you have to be so guarded on this platform. It's telling where our society is today. Mental health issues, SAR, the N-word, the R-word, abuse of any kind, body shaming, and disabilities are all weapons used against people. It's really rather sad. Let's talk about the language used by people. Do people really talk like this? Not where I'm from. Forming a complete sentence without the F-bomb or single exclusive really seems to be a challenge. It is telling how a type of person one is. Do they really talk like this at family functions, funerals, doctor's offices, of course, most of them are unexpected. So why is the same stuff not only to know, but with the fits and moves and just to go?
It's amazing people who don't know people in real life really need to call CPS, the police, the FBI, and threaten to roll up on people. It's like a bad version of West Side Story, and these creators are the Jets and the Sharks gang trying to control their neighborhood.
In my professional opinion, not everyone that is overweight is lazy. Not everyone with false teeth is a crackhead. Not everyone over the age of 40 is elderly and ready for the grave. Not everyone who takes prescription drugs is an addict. Not everyone is poor or trash. The future is worthless. And struggling too fast, not slow and stupid. This offends about 50% of yourself. But I know your truths, your opinions, on YouTube. These are topics to use to weaponize the creator or another creator looking for content. Even though they never watch those channels, if your opinion doesn't fit their narrative,
We're not entitled to it, and are called all kinds of names. Subscribers come from all over the world. There are different beliefs and different cultures. It costs nothing to become respectful. Cherish your subs and leave other channels subs alone. When subs to over 250 channels, there might be some very nice subs out there. If this video pertains to you, maybe try and do better. Congratulations. Please leave me a comment and I can sub up. If you are a creator that thinks you are better than anyone else on this platform, I'll post a link in the description. A sound for you.
Go sub up to the Black Widow channel. I will leave her link in the description. Be sure and hit the like button. Get her out in the algorithm. It may play.
Such creation. At this cross.
Here's your trigger warning. This is Pedro Lopez. I'm not going to read the comments from him. Pedro Pedro Alonso Lopez, born October 8, 1948, also known as the Monster of the Andes, is a Colombian serial killer, child rapist, and fugitive who murdered a minimum of 110 people, mostly young women and girls, from 1969 to 1980. Lopez claimed that he murdered over 300 people and is considered to be as many to be a prolific serial killer in history. I'll give you some of his background. He was born in Colombia in 1949. During the height of the country's La Valencia, which is a war, the violence. This was in fact the last place on earth anyone would have wanted to be born. The country was ruled by riots and unthinkable acts of violence. The problems began just a year earlier in 1948 when the popular liberal politician George Alicia Gatina was naked made for the Civil War and broke loose. He would continue for the next 10 years to take over 200,000 lives. Before it was over, the son of the Penniless prostitute Pedro was the seventh of, or the penniless prostitute Pedro was the seventh of 13 children in his early years and could be described as anything but joyous. His mother was an overbearing woman who dominated her children with the ironclad fist. Regardless of his home life, anything was better than being out on the streets. Human rights violations were with the guerrilla paramilitaries and members of the National Armed Forces who were commonplace, and the country's crime rate was 50 times higher than all other countries in the world in 1957. At the age of 8, Pedro's mother caught him having sexual relations with his younger sister, and his worst nightmare became reality when he was exiled to the streets in order never to return home again. As bleak as the situation appeared, things quickly began to look up as an older man picked him up off the streets, offered him food and a place to stay. Pedro could not believe his luck and quickly accepted the offer of blind faith. Nevertheless, it was a good fact that was too good to be true. Instead of being taken into a plush home with food and bedding, the man took Pedro to an abandoned building where he sodomized him numerous times before tossing him out into the cold, hard streets. Following his misfortune with the older man, Pedro became terrified of strangers, and he always slept in alleyways and deserted buildings and would only meander at night in search of food from the trash cans. and local dumps. It was almost a year before Pedro finally built up the courage to travel about the country and eventually ended up in a town called Bogota. After a few days of begging for food and scavenging dumpsters, a resident American couple approached him. The elderly couple was distressed by Pedro's skeleton appearance and heartbroken watching him beg for food. They provided him with a warm meal and asked him if he wanted somewhere to live. With a few other choices left, Pedro accepted the offer and went to the home of the couple, where they provided him room and board and eventually enrolled him in day school for orphans. Um, Regardless of Pedro's apparent good fortune, as everything else in his life had been like horrible ever since 1960 some. 1963, at the age of 12, a male teacher sexually molested him at a day school, and Pedro's previous fears were reborn. And anger grew within him following the incident. He stole money from the office of the school, ran away from the home. Pedro returned only to a safe place he knew, and that was the streets of Colombia. The Civil War was becoming a thing of the past, and the Cold War is nearly over with the government and reorganizing in factories, which had been built during the Depression, were slowly beginning to reopen. Nevertheless, Pedro had been skilled in many trades and held a minimum education. He had spent the next 6 years of his life begging for food and committing petty thefts in order to survive his mid teens. Pedro began to steal cars to support himself to little and local chop shops. They paid well for the services and were very proficient car. He was a very proficient car thief and was looked up to by the younger apprentices of the trade in spite of his skills. In 1969, 18 years old, Pedro was arrested by authorities for car theft, a surprise, and sentenced to serve 7 years in prison. He served just 2 of those behind bars and was probably go into retaliation after fashion a cured knife from prison utensils. He fashioned a cured knives from prison utensils and spent the following 2 weeks getting his revenge by initially murdering each of the 4 men that the authorities had deemed irreparable damage to Pedro's mind and seemed to have pushed him over the edge of what little sanity he did hold. He endured at the mental abuse he endured at the hands of his mother during the early years had grown fearful of women. He had found sexual intercourse with them impracticable, a word I should know, and fulfilled his desires throughout pornographic books, the magazines. In Pedro's mind, his mother was to blame for all his life sufferings and headaches, along with his heartaches. Upon his release from prison in 1978, Pedro traveled widely throughout Peru. It was during this time that he would later claim that he began stalking and killing at least 100 young girls from various Indian tribes throughout this region. I want to say at this time there's not a lot of law officials that would look into the indigenous community if there was a girl missing or a girl murdered. So this made it very easy for him. And the same goes in the US and still to this day. It's impossible to verify the claim. It's impossible to verify these claims. It is known that he was captured by a group of alpacas, and I said that right, in northern Peru, where attempting to kidnap a 9-year-old Indian, stripped her, tortured her, and she was very lucky. Was apparently on his side, intervened, and luck was on his side when apparently intervened, convenienced by the captures that murdered was ungodly and they should have turned Pedro over to the proper authorities. They reluctantly agreed and and remanded this prisoner over to the Peruvian authorities, not wanting to waste time investigating petty Indian complaints. The Peruvian government deported Pedro back to Escobar. Following his return to Escobar, Pedro began traveling extensively again through the region, including frequent stops in Colombia. Authorities soon said that they began to notice the increase in missing person cases of young girls. However, quickly conducted that they were due to the growing South American sex slave rings in America in 1980. A flash, excuse me, a flash flood near Ambato, Escobar caused authorities to take a second look and the missing person cases. Okay, I started smoking these vapes that everybody talks about. And ever since I have, I've got so congested I could barely breathe. Look into the missing person cases. Raging waters unearthed the remains of four missing children that were difficult to determine the cause of death, that concluded that the girls had obviously met foul play since someone had taken the pains to hide their bodies from prying eyes. Just days after the flash flood of the local region of Cavara was shopping at the local market whenever a 12-year-old girl, Marie, was the when an unknown man attempted to abduct her, and her mother cried out, and the police got intervened into it. Let me go back. Give me 1 second. I got a picture of this lady. I didn't want to put pictures up. This is Pedro. Oh, and I got a little thing here that we can do real quick if you want, or whatever, it don't matter. But if you want to screenshot it and do it, is cross um, where you find the words. And this is some of the victims known that he killed. Pedro Lopez, known as the Monster of the Andes, was nothing like the stereotypical pop culture depiction of criminals from South America, neither charming nor possessing the outlandish style of the Colombian drug lord. Lopez murdered and raped up to 300 young girls in Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador, sorry, from from 1978 to 1980. Lopez strangled his way through the Andes, becoming a nightmare for young girls and parents across the region. Lopez's life combined dysfunction, poverty, and violence to breed someone known as the Monster of the Andes. He was born 1948 on October 8th. This is stuff that we already went over. His father, Medredo Reyes, had an affair with a prostitute and became Pedro's mother. That would have been the mother. The father was shot and killed in front of a grocery store. Um, this was, I think, 6 months before he was born. And then the mother was Belinda Lopez de Castaneda, prostitute who had 12 children. He was the seventh out of 12. And then we went over his childhood. 1969, killing four men in jail for revenge. 1978, released from prison. Released from prison. and murdered 53 young girls throughout Peru. 1980, by this time, he had murdered up to 110 young girls and further confessed to 240 girls. It is confirmed 110 at least. Arrest but released 20 years later because of good behavior by the Ecuadorian government. Let's just show on some of the crime scene. I wish they would have took time to do a psychological profile on him and not quite doctor diagnosis. The crime scenes always took place in isolated mountain and caves. The victims always had their throat slit and their wrist. And of course, after he got out, he started murdering people again. It's not a big thing there. Despite his recidivism of murders. Wow, recidivism of murders. Why is he getting out? Upon his release, he started wandering through the northwestern area of South America, eventually arriving in Peru. Um, this just kind of goes over all the, he confessed to these. He was in prison and released. I'm just going over my outline, which I use Wikipedia. God knows that that's the standard for APA or MBL. Okay, this is all pretty much the same thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and end that there. Let's see if we can go to, I pulled up some pages. I have a feeling most of them are going to be the same. Because there's a lot of information out there on him, but it's pretty much the same thing. It's not like it's anything dramatically different. I did take some notes, so we'll look at those and see if there's anything different. Come on, Apple. If I wasn't trying to record this, this would work perfect. I've had no trouble at all. Okay, here we go. Let's look at this. Let's see, was the monster of the Andes, stereotypical. Get a good look at him. He doesn't look like a killer, which I don't really know what a killer would look like, but Pedro joins a gang. While Colombia, Lopez joined a street gang of homeless children called Gamies, Gamers. During this time, Lopez started smoking Bascuco. I don't know how you say that or what that is. Bascuco. If anybody knows what that is, oh, It's made over from leftover cocaine paste. Okay, I know what that is. Okay. While living on the streets, the young Lopez was picked up by a man and took into his home. We got that. His first arrest. I think they let him out after his first arrest. I lost my innocence at the age of 8, so I decided to do the same to as many young girls as I could. Wow. And then the caught by the native tribe. I got to show you this. I freaking love this.
Regarding Lopez. His whereabouts are unknown as of 2020.
Go sub up to serial killer documentaries. I will be dropping their um, link in the description. Look, Freedom, they got orange drinks. Okay, he's just a nut. This is just showing you the crimes, the times, and the punishment. Most of this we went over anyway. Just kind of wanted to see if there was anything, There's no movies. Usually I find movies on a lot of cases that I do, but there was no movies about this guy. If anybody knows of any, then label and theory. That's the theory he's diagnosed, not diagnosed, that he's labeled with. I know that sounds stupid, labeled with, but or the one that covers what they think that's wrong with him. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Got this one. Okay, we're going to go ahead and shut the show down. I know it's been a fun one. It's always fun when we talk about murder. You people know this. I'm going to go ahead and jump off here, and I hope you enjoyed this. And descriptions will be down in, the links will be down in descriptions. Please go sub up to these channels, especially Black Widow. She is awesome. She needs subs. She needs likes and views. So go watch her videos. They are excellent. And I'm not saying it because she's my favorite. We will see you later. And as always, thank you for joining me. Bye.